Thank you very much. And so, you folks are just well, the so those of you folks are who are got in with us. We do have a little message in the chat, um, and so we do record our sessions, and so this tonight is going to be recorded as well. So we'd love to see your faces, but if you folks are ashamed and you don't even necessarily want your face to be put in perpetuality, then yeah, um, basically, you're leaving your camera on is your tacit approval to be filmed. Um, but we do love to see human faces because we can't reach out and touch you folks. So yeah, definitely, it's always nice to see living, breathing faces when we're speaking. Um, and of course, we do have all of our tonight is a part of the Umanchu Suruti, our monthly Kabudan's monthly lecture series, lecture presentation series. We do have the pretty much the whole series from when we started in April of last year, and a whole bunch of other online presentations that we've done. And we've done many. We'll have all that available on a private YouTube channel. So if you folks, the email is in there in the chat, events at ukwanshin.events. If you email us, then we'll send you a link to that private YouTube channel, and you get access to all those things that we've talked about and shared, musical performances, etc., etc. So yeah, please email us. Okay, and those of you who are joining us late, I had mentioned that if you folks do have something that you want to let the community know about what it is that you're doing, ways that you're engaging the community, both here and on Okinawa, um, please let me know in the chat. So just leave your name and say that you want to share something. And after we do our I guess I'll call you guys my panelists tonight. After our panelists share, then we'd like to open up the floor for you folks to share as well. Okay. All right. Oh, thank you, Colin. Thank you very much for adding that in. Okay, so folks, sorry, my roommate is blending right now, so please pardon the noise. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. For some of you, it's afternoon, and for some of you, it's late night. But thank you so much for joining us. Like I said, this is part of our Umanchu Suruti lecture presentation series, and tonight is a sort of a continuation of what we where we left off last month. We were lucky enough to have our friends in Okinawa share about the situation in southern Okinawa about the landfill soil being with remains of war dead from World War II being transported and used for or planned to be used for landfill in Henoko. And normally when we do these sort of things, we like to give folks options of ways to get involved. Unfortunately, we weren't able to really to engage that. And so tonight we wanted to actually open it up for you folks to have ways to actually be involved politically, and ways that you could actually get involved with either groups or individuals who are actually who are have been doing or are poised to be doing more actions actually related toward political activism. And so, a lot of times when we talk about political activism, those, even the flyer, those words sound pretty charged. And then most of you joining us, I think you folks are pretty used to these things already in these crunching spaces. But those of you who are uh, join us more for our cultural and identity content, and those of you who may not be so certain why we're getting quote unquote political, or why we're talking about activism. It's it's unfortunate, but when we work in a community that is like in Okinawa, that's in a place that's been colonized, and when we're dealing with a land base that's colonized, unfortunately, we can't avoid talking about politics, because it's politics that are overrunning the land of our ancestors. It's overrunning the lives, um, yeah, and the existence of our friends and family there. And so we talk a lot about identity, about connection to homeland, and so it's in doing those conversations. It's sometimes the question comes up: what is a cultural or a music and dance organization talking about these political issues? And when for us, it has everything to do with what we do, because we don't, as musicians and dancers, we consider ourselves space makers. That we create spaces in our performances, in our presentations. We create these spaces that we address the homeland. We address these ties to the homeland, ways to think about the homeland, our connection to that, and ways, more importantly, ways to think about our connections to our ancestors and those all those ties that we have. And so, in creating those spaces, these are these imaginary spaces, but we like to create back those imaginary spaces up with real connections. And so we like to bring people that we know, our friends and families, into these spaces and these circles, and to connect them with the rest of you folks. And so in building those connections, it's inevitable that we find ourselves in having to protect our cultural resources, and these connections, these spaces that we create as cultural preservationists or as cultural practitioners. Inevitably, we have to talk about the desecration and the pillaging of our homeland base, of our communities. And yeah, we feel that there's a responsibility that we have, that we cannot talk about singing and dancing and about the homeland without talking about the struggles and the problems that we face. And so if we talk about being yaninju, we talk about being a family. We have words like iteribechode, what talks about, once we meet, we're family. If we talk about being a family, we can't just be a family only just to get together, just to have fun and sing and dance, and then when times get hard, we just say, "Well, forget it. I'm not going to be involved." So we sing and dance and we have fun together, but then when the going gets rough, we need to be there as a family too. And so we, as a performing arts, as a culturally based organization, we feel that these conversations are really, really important to have. That we can, when we do get the chance to sing and dance together, when we get to experience these our um, our culture together, we get to experience these spaces together, that we have a very clear context of what we're doing. And tonight is a way that we hopefully wanted to open it up to a part of the community that maybe a lot of you folks aren't necessarily familiar with, or have heard about and haven't known really the faces behind a lot of these actions and names that have been going around, that of people that have been doing things in our community to help protect the homeland and help to support our communities here in the diaspora and in the homeland Okinawa. And so I've been very blessed to have been able to have connections with each of these folks individually and on all different kind of in all different kind of chop suey ways. But it just goes to show that the amount of engagement in the work that these individuals that have been uh, able to call to the table tonight, that they're engaged in so many different ways and in so many different things. And I'm very, very pleased to uh, yeah, have them join us tonight to talk about some of the things that they've been involved with, the groups, organizations, actions that they've been involved with, and talk about ways that we can continue being engaged in protecting the homeland or protecting our communities, and also um, protecting our communities in larger ways too, through collaboration and through mutual understanding of the things that we learn about our homeland, the ways that we learn to engage with our homeland. Um, how do we use that to build alliances and collaborations with other people that are are facing similar situations and that need or different ways that we can work together to somehow address a lot of the root problems that affect all of us in similar ways. And so, yeah, with no further ado, I would like to open it up to our venerable panel of speakers. And I, the thing that I just need to kind of to set up for this is that initially I kind of called everyone to the table as sort of kind of representatives, quote unquote representatives, or people that could speak on behalf of the actions that they've taken. But the way in typical island fashion or Okinawan fashion, all of these we get there's a lot of overlap in these places that things that grow out of certain actions, and so basically don't really think of it as these individual, very clear cut groups or organizations. And so you're going to see that there's all these different overlaps and inbreeding, um, intercommunication, all of these different things that come out of all of these, the need for collaboration, the need for action and together. And so I kind of want to frame it from sort of in a way that shows that how these actions are kind of interconnected, and how they yeah and how they've kind of, a lot of them have grown out from different ones. So I'm very fortunate tonight to be joined by newly anointed doctor Dr. Kao Kajihiro, uh, who has been a long time activist and in the community, and for almost anything related to social justice and to embattled communities and communities that need help. He's right there, and yeah, what can I say? So, Kyle, I'd like to ask you to take the floor and just introduce your work with Hawaii Peace and Justice.
Okay. Hello everyone. Um, uh, First of all, I'm Yamase Matonshu in Hawaii, but I was asked to speak because of the kind of solidarity that we've done here in support of struggles in other places. The group is host service committee, the Quaker Peace and Social Justice Organization, and then we spun up in 2011 to create a local there were a myriad of different issues related to
Oh, did we just lose Kyle?
uh, hi.
Hey,
Did
Kyle,
I
sorry, we lost you for a
get
bit.
did you did you hear any of what I said?
It's actually kind of cutting in and out.
Oh, okay. Maybe I should talk a little bit slower. So I just wanted to say that Hawaii Peace and Justice is successor to the American Friends Service Committee, and we work on a number of different social justice issues. One of the main topics is countering the negative impacts of the military in Hawaii, but also connecting with similar struggles throughout the region and around the world. Number, am I seeing or am I coming across?
Yes, it's much better now. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. I can't tell if it's freezing. So what is our core philosophy? So part of it is that in order to have peace, we must work for justice, right? So especially in a place like Hawaii, if we want to have peace in Hawaii and in the region, we have to, the kind of violence and trauma of the US occupation and taking of land, how Hawaiian lands are used to practice and make war against other places, and the kind of slow violence of that military occupation, which is manifests in the kind of toxins and the unexploded ordnance, the destruction of cultural sites, the loss of contact between people and their sacred places because there's a military barbed wire fence in front of it. So there's all these ways that um, we have to work for justice in order to have real peace in this region. And another part of our philosophy is to always be working in solidarity, to look for the ways that we can link arms in struggle and walk together and accompany each other in our struggles. So that's a philosophy of accompaniment, which is not standing in front of or standing behind, but standing shoulder to shoulder with other communities that are dealing with struggles. And so, for example, you know, we've been involved in Native Hawaiian issues, and then we've also gotten involved in Chamorro issues in Guam, Vieques in Puerto Rico, and also in support of the movement in Okinawa. And so some of the actions that we've done, I guess we've seen ourselves as not as an Okinawan organization ourselves. One of the things we can do is to try to help support indigenous leadership where it can emerge. And so Pete will talk about this in his presentation, but we were one of the groups that helped to sponsor the Hawaii Okinawa Alliance when it was getting started. Also working with the International Women's Network Against Militarism to create a group that can participate in those networks, and continuing to be a space for that kind of convergence and solidarity. So I guess one way to think about it, Norman, you were mentioning all these struggles and different interests and issues into something that's stronger than the parts. So I'll stop there and pass it on. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Kyle. You folks can ask questions afterwards if there's some parts that you folks didn't really get. But I'd like to turn it over to so of course, yeah, the two sort of support support children, I guess, are the outgrowths of that support system created by Hawaii Peace and Justice. I'd like to turn it over to actually so two of the keiki here. So Pete with the Hawaii Okinawa Alliance and Aiko with Women's Voice, Women Speak. But so Pete, if you'd like to present first. And those of you, of course, Pete Shimazaki Doctor has been a name that's been synonymous with Okinawan activism in Hawaii, particularly. And we have a joke going on because now that he's one of the elder statesmen in our community, he's we call him our OG, but also one of our OG as well in the community. So Pete.
Wow.
You want me to go ahead? Oh, sorry. You want me to go ahead and run your? Let me know when you want.
Okay, yeah, I'll get to that. Yeah. Just kind of, yeah, I'll get there. Let you know quickly. But first, I just want to go out Ukwanshin fam and everyone out there for your interest. You're listening to this conversation that decades ago it was a very quiet one because there's only a couple people, and so it's so hope building, and if there's could be such a thing in a crazy time to see so many folks coming together concerned. Yeah, and a special thanks to you, Norman, for everything that you do, and including the initiative to pull us together. I know this is one of those conversations that aren't always considered polite, but military occupation isn't exactly polite either. And so we need to address where the real violence lies. So, well, like you were saying, there's a lot of overlap, but today I'll particularly focus on HOA, or Hawaii Okinawa Alliance. That's what the acronym HOA is, means ally or friend in Hawaiian. HOA was an outgrowth from the 90s. I don't know who he's going to talk about it, so I'll leave him space. But yeah, it was some of the early Okinawan in 93, 95, inspired a small collective Shimanchu and allies in the Bay Area to form the Bay Area Okinawa Peace Network. That was in 95, I believe. And soon there was like chapters in LA, Okinawa Peace Network, and eventually I helped open the Hawaii Okinawa Alliance, which was originally one of those peace network. But given the uniqueness of Hawaii, it really needs to stand alone with Okinawa, given the similarities between Hawaii and Okinawa versus the continent. Some of the core philosophies of Hoa Ohana, which is kind of spans generations. I'll just it's really inspired by our Shimanchu proverbs and teachings. Yuimaru is a core one about this mutual support collectively. This isn't a individual group of individuals. It's collectively mutually supporting each other. Nuchidu Takara is another very crucial value, and just simply the preservation of life, which entails balance, right? Which entails pono and justice. And one last value that I would actually credit you, Norman, for putting a name on it for me, something I'd felt all my life, and that's Kabudan, also known as like Kuleana in Hawaiian. It's a, how did you say, Norman? It was a inherited responsibility, if you will. Not something you ask for, like your ancestors or your family name, etc. And so that's kind of what kind of core. Now, as far as what we've been doing, maybe you can go to the visuals, because I don't want to tire or bore people with my face, and maybe some visuals would help, because as we discussed, Norman, while you're setting up, we've been on a lot of actions, but also personally and collectively. So I'll just start. For me, my biggest source of this is Ohana back in Okinawa. So I just had to credit that a lot of what I do now was all inspired back in the motherland by amazing people, Kapuna elders in Okinawa, movement leaders, and as you see there, my Shinzeki, my family in Okinawa. Moving on from that, thanks, Cal. So since I've first heard about these issues in Okinawa, 93, from again, a delegation of Okinawa, and been looking for ways to call attention to this issue. And back in the 90s, it was just to declare being Okinawan was not being Japanese. So kind of shows you like the work we still have left to do, and at the same time, progress. I'm just delighted to see the organization like what you're doing come together. So my inspiration comes in Okinawa, a lot of protests. If you can click to the next slide. That was in 2000. As I relocated to Hawaii in the late 90s, like this paper article on me was about this effort to get a collective going, and that's why it's not about me at all. I hate when they put Pete Doctor, but it was I guess kind of a beginning point of getting a collective going. But moving on, the real HOA really came together as a collective of Okinawan grad students and local Okinawans and folks like myself doing an array of activities. Ide no Hi was one of our first events. We organized the 60th anniversary at the Jiku in Hongwanji, and that has become an annual thing now. But its recognition was very crucial in bringing to the forefront these issues that I've today come from the past. And you're looking at pictures of some of our first generation of HOA that was in parades, was being visible, as well as behind the scenes, organizing delegations. That includes folks from Okinawa to here. And see what other pictures they have there. I put a couple out this, just to give a range of ideas of the act people can do or have done. In this picture here is, many remember Jamie Oshiro, my partner in crime back in the day. Rest in peace, Jamie. Due to the collaboration with folks in Okinawa, we get information. Like in this case, we found out that the governor, then Nakaima, was coming in through Honolulu on a little secret stop. And you could see from his face, he was not happy to see us with the protest signs. He was actually trying to avoid the public because he had been supporting the base. And I don't claim any credit. It's just interesting that Nakaima changed his position weeks later. And then, of course, he stabbed Okinawa in the back and switched his position again later. But this is one example of collectives, folks collectives can do. Can go to other pictures. Next one, please. Yeah, so we've had a lot of protests over the years, different places, some rather joyous. This one is one of the many ones at the Japan consul. And, but we've had them at the consul building. We've had them at the federal building, Camp Smith, and the governor's mansion. I mean, it goes on. So get an idea. Moving on. The picture shows some of the solidarity to the interconnection of issues. And I'm sure you not everything is protest, but these are some of the ways that we've collaborated. This was an article in Okinawa media about one of the rallies we did in conjunction with what was happening in Okinawa. So one of the things that we do is communicating with Okinawa is organizing in concert with things in Okinawa. So for example, there was a important court date, or if there was any significant dates in Okinawa where there was rallies and so forth, we would also call rallies. Sometimes in coordination with the East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, Hawaii. It's pretty powerful to collaborate transnationally. Moving on. And they're just showing some of these pictures. Oh, this is, I just want to focus on some of the solidarity, not just focused on Okinawa, but very much with indigenous rights worldwide, and absolutely with Kanaka Maoli. Moving forward, and you see a lot of generation spread. That's been very important to work intergenerationally. Other actions we've done are delegations to federal representatives, as well as the consul general. And these are not protests, but these are more, coordinated delegations and meetings. In this picture here, this is one to Tulsi Gabbard's office when she was in office. And moving on, there's Ann Wright in that picture. So again, a lot of collaboration here in this picture, including women's voices. So folks here. And moving on to the next picture, I think, because I'm trying to wrap up here. And I just wanted to also include the working intergenerationally, and that includes, talking about this with our keiki and finding fun ways for them to involve, like in parades and so forth. So I think this was just an overview you wanted, right? I can go on, but I don't have the time. So why don't we end it here? And then when we talk about more actions, I can share about them later. That's probably a good place to pass the mic. And probably a disclaimer, wearing many hats. Veterans for Peace, for example. I happen to be a veteran. But it's, again, like a lot of intersections, just like folks on this meeting, collaborate in other different ways, whether academically, professionally, so forth. So grateful to be part of this Ohana. Thanks, Norman.
Thank you very much, Pete. So I'd like to turn it over now to a beautiful poet and writer, and somebody who's a fierce supporter of so many communities and people in our island. She's also the executive director for the Hawaii Council for the Humanities. Aiko, if you'd like to share about Women's Voices, Women Speak.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you, Norman. I'm just listening to Kyle and Pete and remembering all that I've learned from you folks about how to fight for what you believe in and how to love each other. I'm feeling really grateful to be part of this. People are saying like solidarity and alliance, and those words fit, but it's hard to describe. It's like it changes your life and it just expands your heart. That's what I want to share about a little bit. So I'm here as a part of this really wonderful group called Women's Voices, Women Speak. And I'm going to share a few photos of us and about the work that we've done. We are born thanks to some of the other organizations who shared earlier. So it's really nice to kind of think about our connections and also how we're different. We're connected to a larger international network as well, called the International Women's Network Against Militarism. And it's a really interesting group that actually formed from a delegation from Okinawa, who were traveling throughout the US, trying to get more people to protest the bases. And the particular story that they were sharing was about the rape of a girl in 1995. And traveling around sharing it with other women from other countries. And it started this international, I want to say, family of folks who kind of have promised over generations to know what's going on in each other's homes and take care of each other. So I've been rereading my journal from 2017 when a delegation from Hawaii, our organization, got to go to Okinawa to attend this international meeting. And I just wanted to share a little bit of this journal from Ire no Hi celebration in 2017. How do you turn poison into beauty? Starvation into feeding grandchildren? We have to. I have to. I must fight for peace, otherwise I dishonor, I forget, I silence, I erase. I must make healing out of poison. I cannot stand by. Once we know the pain of losing our own homes, our own families, how dare we allow it to happen to someone else? And any beauty, any dance has to come from that. And that was written kind of thinking about my grandma, who was in Okinawa during the war and came to Hawaii after that, pregnant with my dad. Yeah. And so a little bit about me. I was raised in Kaneohe, and thinking about my grandma who had passed before I ever got to go to Okinawa, thinking about how she always fed us, thinking about how the war touched her, and not really understanding it until being involved with groups like Hawaii Peace and Justice, Hawaii Okinawa Alliance, and this organization that kind of took my story and then showed me that bigger picture of why these things have happened, and also what we could maybe do about them to work on healing. So I want to show you just a few photos to put some faces. I think this will work. Here we were at one point in time. I think we're a shifting organization. We're made up of women who our ancestors are from Okinawa, from the Philippines, from Korea, from Guam or Guam, from Hawaii, and other places. And so a lot of the gathering together is kind of thinking about our roots and trying to find the connections and then look for ideas of peace. One of the big philosophies that guides our organization is this idea of genuine security, not national security. We hear about national security a lot. We need to fund the military because it keeps us safe. And instead, what this international network of women wants to talk about is what really keeps us safe is clean food and water, jobs that have dignity to them, the ability to be healthy and to take care of our health, the ability to enjoy and have time with our families and our friends, kind of this quality of life. So what is genuine security? How do we fund that? And how do we imagine that? And how do we not just accept that, okay, we need to feel safe. So here we have to do it through violence and war and through kind of supporting those systems. So a lot of the work we do, I think we try to show up at protests and we do the analysis and we learn about all these issues, but we're also really working on the imagination. So here is some art and activism we were doing at a Hawaiian sovereignty event, thinking about how if our islands are sacred, then how can we agree to kind of bombing or pollution of our water sources or other kinds of things like that. This is that trip to Okinawa in 2017. Again, there's women from all of those countries that I mentioned earlier, and Puerto Rico, Japan, and the United States. And I think you can kind of see in this video, in this photo, a little bit of what I mean by what surprises me is it's not like a bunch of crazy activists who like shout on bullhorns. It's these women who have just been dedicated to thinking about the voices who are not being heard, thinking about the women and children in particular and what stories might come from them, and then meeting with each other and kind of committing to each other and saying, yes, I love you too, and I don't want this to happen to your home either. I'm not going to say get rid of the troops and send them to Guam, right? Let's figure out how we can come out of this together. So this is at the end of our gathering. This was after 3 days of sharing about examples in our different countries of violence against women and murder and rape that happens often in this kind of culture where the military is chief. We talked about pollution of land and water such that it feels almost irreparable. We talked about cancers and live fire ammunition testing and just these patterns that are happening all over the world. And I think maybe all of those things are the things you would think would happen at a peace conference or a demilitarization conference. And I guess what I wanted to share was there's so much love. It's like, and it's over generations. Like the aunties in this picture, they've been committing to not just their own people and their own families and their own stories, but saying, hey, I care about you too. And it can't happen in my place and it can't happen in your place either. And I'm gonna devote my whole life to that. And I'm just in awe of this kind of activism because that is the intention, that is the thought behind it, that is what happens. I'll put this link in the chat later, but we have a blog and it's kind of interesting because it's old and it's new and there are things here and there. But an action that we did after we came back is we collaborated with this health organization in Kalihi, Kokua Kalihi Valley, and had this decolonizing diets dinner event that was Okinawan themed called Finding Our Way Home, Journeys of Personal Decolonization. We cooked some traditional Okinawan food and had some music and shared about our trip. So you might recognize some of the names on that program. It was a really nice program. And there's a really good story on here of Tina who came with us and how kind of the trip helped her understand her mother better. And I'm happy to share more, but I'm going to end with, I wanted to do one more poem. This is, I think it kind of captures what I'm trying to say, and I don't know how well I'm saying it. So this is for our group, and it's written after spending a day together, hearing each other's stories, and then trying to make the connections. Because we have chosen each other. Because Audre Lorde once wrote, we have chosen each other and the edge of each other's battles. The war is the same. If we lose, one day women's blood will congeal upon a dead planet. If we win, there is no telling. We seek beyond history for a new and more possible meeting. Violence in their families, fighting for the rice fields, every grain of rice, sighs, tears, and laughter, stars and wind. Because Kaneohe taught me how to love, adopting countries, adopting single mothers, keeping families together. The truth tellers, healing larger stories, healing family stories. Our families have been infiltrated Our families carry violence. Our families carry love and resistance. Tears pass from face to face. Honesty to continue what my ancestors started, to keep me saying, here is the shell that love brought across the ocean, to see how everything's connected. So the women gathered, made commitments to each other, brought it home. Defend the ice cream shops, the sweet memories of our elders called to be medicine for sugar, called to be medicine for military bases, medicine for privilege, how sons mirror grandfathers, how we need time to mourn and to document. People pass from face to face, people we've never met. Revolutionary farmers, fishers, teachers, musicians, navigators, inheriting land as a thank you. How do we care for these stories? How do we bring all the daughters back to us? How do we care for Kaho'olawe? How do we weave the rope of resistance? We need to go ourselves so we can believe our mothers. Until we cannot unsee our connections, how to fight for, not against. Let our lives be prayers, because we choose the unclear path, because we choose the work of hope, because we choose our entire selves, because we choose each other. Thank you for the time.
Thank you so much, Aiko. And just to let you guys know, that was not scripted or anything. That was purely from the heart. So thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. I'd like to shift it over, and just wanted to mention, I forgot to mention this, but you know, we as much as the folks that we have here tonight are fighters for justice, or people that are involved with these actions and these I don't know, I don't like to call it battles, but sometimes we have to embrace that fierceness, and you know, we refer to people as warriors. All of the folks here tonight are also artists as well in their own rights, and they've been able to bring their arts into their activism and into framing their activism. And it's one of the things that really, I think, is that that passion for the arts is sort of a passion for life, and I think that really you can see from what our friends are talking about is the how that feeds the activism. And so, you know, I think it's one thing that we need to really think about is how do we look at activism that, you know, like Aiko said, it's not just about bullhorns and about, you know, when we talk about protests, it's not just about just, you know, those kind of actions, but really taking into consideration, yeah, what is real security. And a lot of that comes from the way that we show how to love each other and how to communicate with each other. And all of you folks are wonderful artists in your own right in doing that. And speaking of a fellow artist and another OG, the most venerable member of our group tonight. And I honestly feel that he's always been overlooked a lot in our community, and he's one of the original spokespeople for our community in the academic world, our Okinawan community, our Okinawan experience, particularly of the diaspora, and one of the few people that in Okinawan academia that was really willing to speak about the hard truths about colonization and about the need for demilitarization, things like that. And not only that, but not only to speak of it in those spaces, but then to take it and actually turn those into actions. And so Wesley has been a friend for many, many years, but more than that, he's been a fierce ally for everybody. He's been involved with almost everybody's actions and stood in everybody's corners. And so, and I think what you're going to share about Wesley, right, is sort of this, sort of shows that this sort of in-betweenness, but also this connectedness sort of being in between. So if you'd like to share about the project that you're involved with.
Thanks, Thomas, for that generous introduction. So if he is the OG and the OG, I'm the old fuck. So if you're not from Hawaii, I don't know if old fuck means old fart. One thing good about growing up in Hawaii is we have these terms that we, they just sound better in old fart just sounds better than old fart. Anyway, old fart. And speaking about being an old fuck, I just think about growing up. I'm so old that when I was growing up on Hawaii, there were only like 2 or 3 radio stations, and we lived in Kalaheo, which is like way kind of in the country on the west side. And sometimes the signal doesn't come in too clear. So those of you who are younger, you might not be familiar with analog. We had AM radio, analog signal, and the analog signal would sometimes fade out, then come in strong, then fade out. Just like when Kyle was speaking today, he kind of cut out but came in. So I think I was just thinking of what I'm going to talk about when I was listening to everyone else. It's like we're kind of like analog people. Digital is great as a technology, but we have to pay attention to the analog signals sometimes. And this idea kind of popped up into my head listening to Aiko's poetry. It's like when I was younger, I didn't listen as carefully to other people. I had to really open up my heart, my ear. I had to learn how to open up my heart and my ears. I'm not a poet, I don't write poet, and I'm only in these later years in my life, I'm trying to appreciate poetry. And I realized that I have to open up my heart and my ears. So that's just my introduction of where I'm coming from. This whole time that I've been involved in these issues pertaining to Okinawa, it's been a a journey of learning to open up my heart to other people, and so that I kind of at a loss of words today, because I was hoping that Eriko Uehara, who I work with, we worked together on the Okinawa Liberty Project. I thought she was going to be here, but she's in Ireland, and I think the time difference kind of made it where she couldn't join in. So I was going to say, "Oh, Eriko, take the mic," but now I'm here talking. Maybe I'll give some background, and I'll try to keep it short. But I first got involved in the issues of militarization in Okinawa, and this was back in 1995, and that's when I met Pete. And that was when the women's caravan from Okinawa came to San Francisco. And at the time, I'll try to keep this story short. It's a kind of long story, but I was really into my Okinawan identity, and especially music and all aspects of Okinawan culture. And I lived in Okinawa for 2 years, but I didn't open up my heart. Getting back to opening my heart, I didn't open up my heart to the presence of the U.S. military. Those things were there when I was in Okinawa. They're the bases, and I would see them, but it didn't hit me on a heart level until, ironically, when I was in grad school in Berkeley, the Women's Peace Caravan came to the Bay Area, and they presented a whole different perspective of Okinawa, how the U.S. military bases and militarization and imperialism and colonization in general really affects people, like real people, their everyday lives, their physical bodies, as well as their emotional being. And it was um, for a long time, my I created this identity based on Okinawa as the Ryukyu Kingdom and Red Kingdom, um, and um, after that experience of meeting the Okinawa Peace Caravan and hearing their presentation of Okinawan history, all that came crashing down. My whole identity as Okinawan came crashing down, and I had to recreate that um, based on new knowledge. And that's when that's almost like how I started a new life is at that time. And that's when I met Pete. And soon after that, I met Kyle and many other people. I met the members of the Women for Gender Security, so many other people. And then I would come to Hawaii, and there were few people to talk about the base issues. But little by little, I was so happy when I was able to connect with Norman, Eric, Keith, and others to talk about what was happening in Okinawa. And it felt so like so good to have people who were talking about these issues. Let's see. Right now, I'm working with the aforementioned Okinawa Liberty Project, and the Okinawa Liberty Project is I work with mainly women who are in Okinawa, and so the first project that we got involved with was the Nakamafuya issue, where soil from southern Okinawa is being used for building the base in northern Okinawa. So the soil that has the remains of Wargate from the Battle of Okinawa. And that was our first project. As a Sansei male Okinawan, it has been a very, very great learning experience. The women and the people I work with in Okinawa, their connection to the soil and the land is so visceral, so strong. For me, I can imagine that because my grandparents are from Okinawa. But to feel the deep feelings of needing to protect the land, the soil, the land of Okinawa, kind of overflowed and deeply affected me. So that was our first project, and we sent out a statement to present to the governor of Okinawa, which many ukwanshin members signed on to, and I'd like to thank everyone for that. It was the statement along with some of the news about who signed it, and some of the people who signed on it was in the Okinawa Times. And I've been learning that since right now I'm in Okinawa, that these actions that happen overseas, especially involving diaspora Okinawans, do have an effect in Okinawa. It bolsters the spirit of people in Okinawa, so people don't feel alone. And so, just like this meeting now is really helpful for me, is that it's just, especially with the pandemic, there's these times when you feel so alone and isolated. Some days you start thinking you're crazy. I must be crazy for thinking this way. But to see people, all of you, I'm not that crazy. I'm not crazy. I'll try to wrap this up. But the Okinawa Liberty Project, we started off with the soil issue. If Erica was here, she could help me out. But some of the other projects we're thinking of is, say, for example, the PFOS, the dangerous chemicals that are being released into the water, the public water water supply in Okinawa. one of the actions we're proposing, we're thinking of is, since I'm based in California, is pressuring the Alex Padilla, a representative from California, who has a bill to protect, I think it's a Clean Water Act to protect military families, to try to pressure to put Okinawa into the language of the bill, to also include Okinawa into the Clean Water Bill. So we're thinking of such direct actions as that, and we can discuss that later. Sorry, I've been all over the place, but I guess I'll stop there and then talk about later on in the question and answer part. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Wesley. And so you're not totally off the hook yet because, I mean, I think most of you have sort of a feel now of how, it's unfortunate that, there's so many other pressures to do so many different things. I mean, just to, to do your job and to do everything else that, a lot of times it's, we have to unfortunately do these things in between everything else that's going on in lives, as as Pete shared earlier too, even having to interweave this between doing family, of course, Wesley with a lot of family obligations, Kyle as well, and yeah, even Aiko at home. Everybody has all these different obligations to work, family, and other parts of the community that, of course, it gets really hard to do these sort of sustained actions, but then there's sort of a lot of these actions kind of coalesce when there's something that needs to get done and people pull together, and then sort of everybody sort of lays a little dormant for it. And so I think a good example of that is also the Global Uchinanchu Alliance. Global Uchinanchu Alliance. That's something I think both Pete and Wesley, you folks are both a part of that. Could you? They have a wonderful website, and thanks, Pete, for posting that in the chat. And those of you who please go to that website, and if you need a reference to kind of catch you up on some of the like the background, the history on some of the pressing issues that are going on in Okinawa right now, please go to that website and see. There's a lot of good it's a very good reference for those sort of things. But could you folks talk a little bit about how GUA, Global Uchinanchu Alliance, got started, and if there's any action or any kind of things going on with that group at the moment?
You want to go, Wesley? Segue. Oh, we're both on, bro. Okay.
Oh.
Well, it's really this conversation. It's a continuation. GUA came out of these meetings like Wesley mentioned in the 90s, and that was sparked by delegations from Okinawa coming here coming to the States, I should say. And it's as the name suggests, there's quite a network spanning multiple different time zones. One of the many things that made it really difficult, so I'm just going to be upfront and say that this is a project that got built, started, got a good start, and then the pandemic hit, and people got spread thin, dealing with, as you said, a lot of other responsibilities. And so it's not quite dead. It's just we need a breath of fresh air, and that's I'm so grateful, Norman, opening this up. Because yeah, we're just open arms to folks that want to collaborate. What you want to add some things, Wesley?
Okay. Life happens, because it wasn't only the pandemic, but we had, like I had a new daughter, and then we had to come back to Okinawa for family reasons, and things like that happen. But it's just like that analog signal. It's always there, and you gotta kind of struggle to get that signal back, to listen to the signal, to pick it up. Yeah, so we're here. It's like family. we're gonna be here.
Yeah, and so you're asking Norman about projects. We did do some projects, some collaborations One of them was a collaboration effort that basically came down to an email campaign that we were part of that was targeting the Armed Service Committee of the US Congress. That's a part of Congress that, you know, deals directly with the military. So that's who we were targeting as one of the biggest decision makers on military policy. And that did, you know, we got to think of this as like there's a lot of small battles, if you will, joyous, beautiful battles. And the fact that now in Congress, there are Congress members aware. I mean, they've been hearing this for a long time, but most of what they hear is the Japanese delegation saying, this is a Japanese program. Our federal delegates all been programmed by Japan to have this narrative. And it's exciting to see this narrative break, because now in the Congress, they're saying that there are humanitarian, environmental concerns in Okinawa. That has not been in paper, acknowledged by the US government until recently. So that's just an example of some of the little cracks we can help break in this wall in our humanity, you know.
Thank you
And
for sharing.
I'll just say too that I don't know, there's folks in the chat, or not chat, but other folks in the audience, if they want to jump in that have been part of the project or whatnot, I would welcome them to chime in as well.
Yeah, and I think sort of from an outsider perspective, I thought what was really fascinating about Gua was that it was a very diverse cross-section of the community, right? There were academics, activists, people, cultural people, and things like that were kind of coalescing to this action. So I thought that was really amazing. And yeah, like I say, if you folks go to the website, you can see yeah, a lot of these things kind of coming together there. So hopefully we can and that's part of the reason why we're doing this tonight too, is if we can hopefully get some human resources to help in places to kind of help boost that analog signal that Wesley's talking about as well.
Yeah, Norman, if I could add real quick too, that, you know, Gua is an ongoing project of a transnational sorts. And where we started was working locally, right? Bay Area, whatever. And it's just been going from the local to the transnational, and you know, from the personal, you know, to the social and the cultural. And so these are not fixed things. These are not, they're open for people to breathe life and steer the ship. Yeah. And I just, last thing I'll say is I felt, I cut myself off on my presentation because it felt so overly political, and I appreciate the artist here is speaking more of the why we do it. You know, I'm trying to keep it short, but really it's just comes out of great love, really. Just protect, you know, if you love something, you'll stand up and protect it. So that's it. Not really that more political than that.
And just to make sure that we get some love for Pete's artistry as well. Pete is an amazing musician as well, and this is a good example, if folks can see this, of combining his art with his activism, and sort of you mind just sort of, sorry Pete, since you're talking about this the cross between, yeah, sort of your overlapping lives, you mind just giving us some background in this photo here?
Sure. Yeah, you're absolutely right. As much as I struggle to work collectively, I've often found myself having to work alone, you know, just assert my conscience. And that would include, like, say, in faith communities, you know, trying to push my temple, for example, social concerns committee, and it's, you know, not all political. So this picture was at an APEC gathering, huge political gathering here in Hawaii some years ago. And long short, the music group I was part of was invited to play. I refused because of the opposition to APEC in Okinawa and by the world's people, farmers worldwide, etc. But out of respect for my group, you know, who was one of the don't say me political groups, So I learned to maintain my relations and, just stay positive and keep relationships. But I agreed to play, but my conscience is like, okay, I'm going to play because they're using us for wallpaper for their political event. And there was the Japanese government specifically that, saw us as like, I don't know, entertainers, whatever. So I felt strongly, I'll go play, and I'm not going to make us fuss, out of respect for my group members, but I will wear my conscience. And so you can see from the Japanese messaging, it was not intended for English speaking audience. It was specifically to the Japanese delegation. And across from where we were playing was the defense minister and all these high muckamucks and the Japanese defense ministry. And it caused quite a fervor. I'll keep it short. They just asked me to give you the background, but I didn't really think it would make a big thing. It was just more of myself. Just, I got to go in with my conscience. And it really, really, really upset the Japanese delegation. Is that the end goal? Not at all. But it definitely was to make them know that we're concerned and we're watching, because at those political gatherings, they do everything they can to sanitize it, to keep those issues out. And that practice that kind of extends to other institutions in the state to sanitize these issues. So I was quite shocked to see the impact it had. And yeah, I was just trying to find a middle way, if you will. If you're heard of Jesus and Buddha talk about a middle path of like trying to find a place where I could, respect my band members in that event, and then speak my piece. Yeah. Thanks for pointing that out, Norman. Yeah, I cut myself off.
No problem. Thanks for sharing. All right. So, of course, yet another sort of layer of interconnectedness. And so, via Pete, and of course, we've also been able to have an international sort of coalition, gaining traction with an international coalition. So, Veterans for Peace has been a great ally in protesting the building of the base in among other things around the world, of course, in very supportive of demilitarization and land and environmental issues in Okinawa. And we were supposed to be joined by Anne Wright of Veterans for Peace. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here. She is spending time with family, and she's actually went off to be a part of another action in was it California, I believe, or in
Creech Air Force Base,
Nevada.
Oh yeah, Nevada. Yeah. So it just goes to show you how active Anne and of course the Veterans for Peace organization is. And so, but she was kind enough to do a video for us, just to talk about the Veterans for Peace involvement with Okinawa as well. And so I'd like to share that with you folks right now.
Good evening. My name is Anne Wright, and I am a member of Veterans for Peace, the chapter here in Hawaii. And I've been asked to make a presentation about our National Veterans for Peace organization and its solidarity with many of the things that are happening in Okinawa, particularly challenging the U.S. militarism in Okinawa and the never-ending bases in Okinawa. So I'm going to make a presentation of that situation, and here it is. I'm speaking to you through a recording because I'm in Houston, Texas right now visiting family, and it's midnight here. So I beg your indulgence for letting me speak to you in in a recording. So it's a real pleasure to be here with you. And our Veterans for Peace National has taken several trips to Okinawa, taking members in solidarity with the great folks who are really, after 70 years of World War II, are tired of U.S. military bases being on Okinawa. And so we too, as Veterans for Peace, say we need to reduce the amount of militarism there is in the world and the huge footprint that the United States has, but with its military bases all over the world. So we took 15 members of Veterans for Peace to Okinawa in December of 2015. And we've taken other members later on. Pete Doctor was a part of another delegation that was there. One of the things that we did, as you can see here, we were out on Ora Bay to challenge the Hanoko Camp Schwab airfield, air runway that's being built out in Ora Bay. So we are here with the people from Okinawa who put out an international appeal for people to come and help. And in international solidarity, we brought our Veterans for Peace delegation here. Here's one of our banners from Veterans for Peace. No new U.S. military bases in Hanoko. Protect the earth and the soil. Veterans for Peace. They let all of us speak as we were out on the water, speak to the police boats that were out there with us to make sure that no one got across these big strings of floats that separate anyone who's challenging the runway from those that are building it. We also were on land and joined with the people every single day in Hanoko who are sitting to say, no, don't build this base. And so every morning they sit in front of the gate and then the police come and lift them out of the way. So in solidarity, we joined with them. And we also went over to Fatimba Air Station, which is as you all know, in a very congested part of Okinawa, and trying to get that base closed because there have been air crashes, there have been crashes into schools, there have been all sorts of accidents that have happened there. And in this very, very congested area, it's a very dangerous place to be having a U.S. military base. So we were there with a group that was every day goes out to say, close this base. We also met with a lot of the stalwarts in Okinawa. And this is former governor of Okinawa, Ata Masahide, at his Peace Museum. Rest his soul. He has been certainly a voice for peace, and his museum with the artifacts of the terrible tragedy of the Battle of Okinawa in World War II was something we wanted to go by and pay our respects to him and all of the work he did to build a remarkable cemetery for peace that had the remains of everyone that was killed there, from the people of Okinawa to the Japanese soldiers to the US soldiers, a memorial to the tragic costs of war. So we were very honored to be able to be with him. We had many opportunities to speak to the community about our concerns as Veterans for Peace. And this is one of the events where we had some of our younger vets that were speaking there. Here's another picture of another event. We probably had 5 or 6 different community events and co-sponsored by the Veterans for Peace chapter in Okinawa. It's a very active chapter, and they were our hosts for being there. So we really did appreciate all the work that they did to help us tell our stories and to help them in their day-to-day work in challenging the militarization of Okinawa. And here's another picture of another one of our community events. And this is to the very right is Suzio Takasato, who is one of the experts in the world on the tragic situation of US military sexual violence in Okinawa that still goes on. And she has been compiling the information about US military sexual assault on Okinawan women and children for a long, long, long time. So we were very pleased to be able to meet with her and to express solidarity in holding these criminal acts and criminal people that are committing these acts accountable. So our whole trips to Okinawa are very important for us as veterans to say that we want the world to be a less militarized place, and certainly Okinawa as one of the centers of militarism, tragically, in Asia. We certainly hope the US military, and we're pushing hard for the US military to reduce its presence, which it is slowly starting to do, but it's just moving people more over to Guam and here in Hawaii. So I hope that if you have veterans in the audience, that you'll consider joining us, Veterans for Peace Hawaii, and all the work that we do in the community. We would be very, very pleased to talk with you. Pete, who's part of your organization, is a great member of it. And we thank you very, very much for this opportunity to be with you. So thank you very, very much. And I wish you the best. And again, my apologies for not being with you in person, but I hope you understand that I'm with you in spirit, but it's midnight in Houston. Aloha.
All right, thank you very much. And yes, Pete provided the link as well in the chat to get involved with Veterans for Peace. And actually, I will be remiss to mention there was another great action that took place. Was that earlier this year? The it had a very cool name, Ti Chi'ing. And so spreading the activism into our academic sphere as well. So I believe Wesley, or should I say Dr. Uyunten, you mind, since you're so uncomfortable speaking, I'll let you take the lead on talking about that.
Kidding. You put the cap down. So the teaching, it started with several months ago. There was the resolution in the Berkeley City Council in support of the protesters, and in opposition to the base construction at Hinoko, was up for a vote in the Berkeley City Council. The year before, it was up for a vote, but it was due to intervention by the local Japanese consulate here, the San Francisco Japanese consulate, who lobbied with various members of the council. The year before, a substantial number of council members refrained from voting, and I think at least one voted against the resolution. That was unheard of, because we had resolutions at the City Council before that were in support of what is happening with the protesters in Okinawa. But in recent years, there's been more intervention by the Japanese consulate in these matters. So we decided it was an idea of one of my colleagues here, Neil Summers, here in the Bay Area. Let's have a teach-in, to talk about the issues in Okinawa. A teach-in. I was just I did a play in words, and I thought, okay, tichi, tichi, tachi, michi, yuchi, tichi is one in Okinawa, and in Japanese, go engaru, and it's we share karma. In is kind of like karma, so in Okinawa, tichi in, so one fate or one karma, so we're all tied together. So we have this tichi in, and we met, I think, right before the vote for the resolution came up. And by the way, this year it was passed. I think it squeaked by. So the Berkeley City Council passed a resolution in support of the protest against the Henoko case. So we were able to have, again, like people from different parts of the world talking about Okinawa. And I don't want to put them on the spot, but other people, I don't know, like
Sayaka and Daniel.
Misako and Daniel, but they were there. If you wanna talk more about teaching, no shame.
Oh, Risako.
Sorry to put you on.
I'm not
Sorry.
sure it's okay to jump in, but yeah.
Jump in.
Thank you. Danielle, come join. So yeah, so good thing it's Wesley initiated this group and then I got involved in it. Oh, sorry, my name is Risako. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a PhD student in applied anthropology at Oregon State University. And I recently came back to Okinawa for my doctoral research. So I'm listening in from Okinawa. So we organized this teaching group and then it was amazing. We had like probably several meetings so far, and then each of us has you know, our own strengths, you know, speaking more than one language, probably more than two languages. And then most of us are coming from academia, so we have kind of like certain language or certain access to you know, academic resources or connections. So we were talking about like how can we use our ability or privilege to you know, make it visible, like make what's going on in Okinawa visible. So we are still kind of like trying to get together more often and then trying to do more projects such as like translation. You know, there are two, as you know, there are two local newspapers, and then but their articles are usually written in Japanese. And then so for Okinawan diaspora community, it's sometimes hard for them to, you know, get the information timely. But you know, in this group, we have like probably at least 10 people who speak Japanese, English, and another language as well. So we are trying to organize kind of like a translation team and then try to, you know, publish the news more timely so people can not learn about what's going on. And, you know, as you know, there are so many diaspora, Okinawan diaspora people in South America too. So we should try to use Spanish and Portuguese as well. So it's an amazing opportunity or space to create, you know, or to put like collective effort in it. And it's also a healing space. We try to get to know individual through our own story, you know, family history. So that's what we are doing through teaching. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, I might add something. I'm Daniel. I'm Nisei Okinawan from Canada. I grew up in Vancouver, but I'm also a PhD candidate doing my research in Okinawa. So I've sort of found my way back here, and I've been here for almost 2 years. So I'm joining today from Chubu, from Nishihara, where the helicopters are as loud as ever today, as always, every day, morning till late at night. But yeah, no, I really appreciated the opportunity to get in touch with, you know, to meet you folks and participate through Teachin. It was a really great opportunity. I think, you know, when the Berkeley City Council was being deliberated, when they were casting votes on the motion, I was with Wesley and his family at the Geetomai at Henoko. And so I think one of the cool things about that experience is we were able to link. So we had I think we had maybe Pete and folks live in Berkeley City Hall, right, at the council, in the council chambers. And then we had my phone on speaker at the gates of Camp Schwab, waiting and sort of watching the motion go to council and get voted on. And I think Takazato-san and everybody else at the gate really appreciated that. Just as Wesley was saying, it helps, the connection helps folks feel less alone, right? And I think it was any time that we were able to connect live like that out from Henoko to the rest of the world, and specifically within the Uchinanchu Shimanchu community, global diaspora, it's a really powerful, impactful thing. And so I think it was heartening for people under the tent that day to hear this motion being passed so far away. You know, some people said, like, why are they really worried about that? You know, what do they care about what's happening here in Berkeley, right? But to be able to sort of explain that, you know, there's cohorts of Uchinanchu Shimanchu over the world, or, you know, all around the world, who are organizing around these issues. I think it helps people, especially right now when numbers are so low at the gate at Henoko, you know, on day-to-day basis, right? I think it's going to change in the next week because COVID numbers have miraculously dropped here recently. But, you know, right now when there's, you know, maybe 5, 6, 7 people at the gate on a day-to-day basis, it really helps to sort of facilitate that connection to the bigger Uchinanchu community. So yeah, again, just thanks to Pete and Wesley for bringing that group together. It was a really great experience.
Intergenerational.
Thank you so much for jumping in and sharing about that. It's wonderful. It's seeing all of these different people from different places, different locations, even getting involved in different actions. And so, on that note, I kind of want to open it up to you folks, our venerable panel of people who have hit the ground hard with political action. And if you could just share with us, well, you know, as we've seen that, you know, a lot of the groups and actions that you folks, again, like Wesley said, it's that signal that's always there. It just needs to get, sometimes it needs to get boosted and needs to be come to the forefront. Are there any things that any of you folks are working on, or anything that's ongoing that yeah, that ties in? And I know there was somebody had mentioned in the chat about the locally the issue of the water tanks at Red Hill. I'm sorry, the jet fuel tanks that are threatening our water supply, basically our potable water supply for the whole island. Yeah, and that got mentioned as well. Yeah, is there any actions going on that are tied to Okinawa or even tied locally that, you know, that, so I want to frame this for our community here as well, is that, you know, one of the things that as you can see from what our friends are telling us about the actions, it's not only just about doing actions for Okinawa because we're Okinawans, but it's about also taking that feeling of responsibility, that feeling of connectedness, and have that connection with our, of course, our lands here, and, you know, our the things that affect our lives here as well, and having that also be a sort of a lens to be able to see the different things that are going on, and especially the things that are going on within our own community. So of course it's to build a closer tie with, of course, our homeland and our ancestral homeland, Okinawa, but also to build, in a practical sense, to build a real lens to be able to see the kind of things that are going on that are a result of colonization, a result of imperialism, that are a result of these big words that we hear, but we see in our everyday lives, in our communities, we see very, very real consequences of those. And so the Red Hill tanks is a very good example of that. So, but yeah, so anything that you folks are looking at doing, or that might maybe need support, or something that you folks are thinking about that, hey, it would be good if we can get this started or something, please go ahead and share with us. Go ahead, Pete.
Okay, if I may, as you mentioned, have you guys been addressing the issue with human rains in the soil? Granted, just the bases alone are bad enough, you know, permanent bases. But so Veterans for Peace, and we have the Okinawa chapter, the Hawaii chapter, and then we have a national organization. All have been active in trying to address this issue. Veterans for Peace in Okinawa have sent letters, including Gushiken, who you had on your one of your programs, I believe. Forward his letter and to the DPAA, you know, around the defense MIA authorization, I don't know, their alphabet soup, and no response. So that is an effort that I'm working with others, including any folks here are interested in being part of a delegation address. The DPA is actually the Pacific office is right here in Honolulu. Unfortunately, it's on inside Hickam Air Force Base, but so we're putting together a letter, but we want to do it locally. So folks want to join together in a delegation, particularly putting this out. If you folks know anyone that has MIA family, you know, lost someone in the Battle of Okinawa that was never found, would be a critical voice to really address them. You know, unfortunately, the US government really only cares about the US government, you know, and so an example of that is at the USS Bowfin in the Pearl Harbor complex. If folks may not know the story of the Tsushima Maru, I don't want to go on a long thing. That was a tragedy that happened before the Battle of Okinawa, where the USS Bowfin, which sits in Pearl Harbor, sank a ship carrying evacuating civilians. The Tsushima Maru Foundation contacted US Bowfin to add an insert in the museum about this history, and they ignored them. They never contacted him. And then Veterans for Peace here locally, including Ann Wright, contacted USS Bowfin, and within months they have an insert there now on the Tsushima Maru tragedy inside there. So this is an example of collaboration and the need for folks with like that are based in the US to put pressure on the US government. So again, folks are interested in collaborating on this, please contact me.
Thank you, Pete. Oh yeah, and thank you, Risako, for sharing that information on the Tsushima Maru. Yes, that's a very visible, unfortunate connector between Hawaii and Okinawa. But Kyle, would you like to jump in and let us know if is there any actions that Hawaii Peace and Justice is initiating regarding the? I know you've been really busy with opposition to the jet fuel tanks in Red Hill, but can you speak a little bit about?
Sure. Well, thank you for that. So I mentioned in the chat that the Sarah Club has been one of the main groups challenging the Red Hill fuel tanks, which are leaking. They were built during World War II. They hold millions of gallons of jet fuel, and they sit 100 feet above the Halava aquifer. And so they've been trying to get it either shut down or double lined, right? And the Navy's been resisting doing that. And so they filed a lawsuit, they filed a contested case hearing, and that has been proceeding. So right now they're in they're still in the end part of the contested case hearing and are making their final sort of arguments about the judge's decision before the director of Department of Health decides whether or not to issue a permit for the Navy to continue, a 5-year permit for the Navy to continue operating the tanks without all the protective measures in place. So while that's going on, we're trying to mount pressure on the congressional delegation because really they are key in terms of getting funding and putting pressure on the military to relocate the tanks, either relocate or completely double line. Our preference is that they retire the tanks completely. And so that's one, there's a petition on the Sierra Club website that is directed at Congress, and Hawaii Peace and Justice also has a petition calling for the shutdown of the Red Hill tanks. We're also looking to initiate some more grassroots organizing. So if you live on Oahu, you want to get involved, we really need like local leaders in different communities who belong to organizations, churches, clubs that can, rally support from the community and to put pressure on different levels of government, from the neighborhood boards to the city council to our state legislature, to pass some measures that would basically regulate and require greater protection for our water, right? And so we're looking to hire an organizer and doing that kind of grassroots organizing. But if anyone's interested in that, please contact us. Another issue that's happening is the Army has leases about 30,000 acres of Hawaiian trust lands in Hawaii, 23,000 acres on Hawaii Island, and then at 3 sites on Oahu, Kahuku, Po'amoho, which is near Wahiawa, and Makua Valley. They lease these lands for $1 for 65 years, and those leases expire in 2029. And so the Army is in the process of doing an environmental review, and we've been trying to organize people to oppose the renewal of these lands, have them cleaned up and returned to the Hawaiian people. These are public trust lands, which are the lands of the Hawaiian Kingdom. And we'd like to see them be restored as a place for environmental as well as cultural restoration practices. Yeah, and so that campaign is going on. If anyone has, contacts in those areas or is concerned about it, please get in touch with us, and we'd love to plug you into that campaign. And there's some other ones, but I won't get into all of that. I'll stop there. Thanks.
Thanks, Kyle. Do you mind also just in case people missed it, if you could add some information how to contact you folks as well in the chat? And Pete as well. I think Pete, if you can give information how people can get in touch with you to support the Veterans for Peace actions that you folks are initiating. Yeah, so there is Kyle's email address.
Can I just underline a little bit of what Kyle shared too?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think this question about the drinking water, it comes back to something again that our group thinks a lot about, that we get told that we need X, we need the jet fuel tanks for our safety, but really what do we really need for that genuine security? And I think this Red Hill issue is a really important one for us here to just learn more about and talk more about and think about, because if we lose our drinking water, I don't know, then what? It's a really, really important issue that affects us, all of us, even if that's not our aquifer, right? If that water goes, then we're taking someone else's water in order to keep living. So it's so impactful for us and then for the generations to come. And I think this issue and the other issue that Kyle mentioned about the leases for these huge pieces of land, for us to all here today, like, look out for those names and want to learn more and, get in touch with Kyle and Pete folks about these kinds of actions. That's so important, connecting back to Okinawa, to this question of, again, this logic that no, we need the land for the military base. And there too, there are other groups trying to show, no, if you give the land back to something else, to education or to growing food or to a different kind of being able to live, then there's so much else possible. So I think we have to really work on exploring that, like not just accepting this is the only way, we only have this one path, but what really gives us safe and fulfilling lives, and how do we help to make those things happen? So this question of if the land can come back into other uses for peace and for everyone's well-being, I think that's really, if we can really explore that here, I think it could help other places as well. It does help what's happening in Okinawa too.
Can I add just a little bit to that? It reminds me that there's an issue of water pollution in Okinawa with the PFAS and PFOS contaminants getting into the waters around Futenma and other bases. And that is an issue here in Hawaii. There are groups working on it in the continent, and I put a contact in there of Pat Elder. He's a researcher who's doing a lot of work around the Chesapeake Bay and that PFAS contamination. So maybe that's a connection that could happen to support. But since Okinawa is also dealing with water, we're dealing with water. And I was just on a webinar sponsored by some youth in Guam, where they're fighting to protect their water, their aquifer, from a Marine Corps firing range, which sits right on top of this. And so maybe there's an alliance here around water protection that we can be forming and thinking about how to do that.
Thank you very much, Kyle. That's very important. Yes, definitely. We need to think, especially I think for those of us in island communities, we really need to think about how can we collectively, because we're dealing with these very huge, huge powers, and but you can see from the work that just a small group of people are doing, and but you can also see why they're so busy and so engaged is because everything just overlaps, and there's so many places of overlap and places that need just need help and attention, and it really speaks to the need of having to build these allyships, and to for also, I think, all of us to sort of watch each other's backs, to use what our own experiences, the things that we see, the things that we care about, the things that we connect to, use that as sort of mirrors in a way, and sort of lenses for us to be able to understand somebody else's dilemma. And also the most important thing is that we don't pass on our problems or things that we care about. We don't make that somebody else's problems, just like how Wesley had mentioned about his blind spot of seeing Okinawa. And that's something that we really I want to reiterate about that idea of that connection to homeland, that if we're building this connection to homeland, we're claiming to be Ya Ninju, we're claiming to be Chode, that we actually act it, that we take that, and also take those things that we learn from our culture as far as how do we bond with each other, how do we build these family connections, how do we build these relationships, and we take those lessons, and how do we take those, and how do we relate with other people, with other communities, that that we need each other to survive, and that we need these relationships, and we need these bonds in order to really have true security, true fulfillment in life, and a true quality of life. And how do we take those lessons that we learn from our own community, from our own histories, from our own culture, and how do we take those to build meaningful relationships with others as well? So I'd like to, at this point, open it up to our audience. Those of you, thank you so much, especially those of you who are staying up really late to be here. For anybody that wants to share anything that you folks are doing, and nothing is too small, every little bit counts. And if you folks are looking for places of overlap, places to you're looking for possible allyships, or even just maybe some guidance as far as where you can take certain things, or if you have a seedling of an idea that you'd like to see happen. I think if there's anybody that can really speak to those, how to spawn these ideas and how to really grow these things, it's these are four wonderful speakers tonight. So I'd like to open it up for all of you folks to share. You can go ahead and just unmute your mic and jump on board. Nobody.
I can go. Hi, Tai Chiganavira. My name's Esme. I'm a recent graduate of Ethnic Studies at UH Manoa. I'm a part of Affirm Hawaii, which is a transnational feminist group who is fighting fascism, but also trying to build greater awareness for the ways in which sex trafficking and the idea of sex work has been deeply oppressive to Indigenous women globally. So we're committed to fighting against colonization in all these different kinds of forms. And one of the ways that we have committed ourselves not only to our personal values, because although the group is Filipina in origin, obviously, you know, many women feel called to this group because we share these stories like Aiko talked about of similar, you know, experiences under colonization, under military occupation. And so many of us have committed ourselves to this org, but also to community by working in Loikalo, doing just work within the community and restoring natural foodways in Hawaii. And it's been really cathartic, and I thought I'd just share a little bit about that because I think a lot of ancestral trauma, at least in my lineage and in my experience of coming to Hawaii, or my family's experience of coming to Hawaii, has been very much wrought in us being divorced from our ancestral lands and being divorced from our ancestral ways of connecting to the land. So reconnecting and also at the same time mitigating your, you know, because we have these dual existences when you live on other people's land, right? You're an indigenous person in diaspora, but you're also a settler. So I find that, you know, planting kalo or whether you're cleaning up a local i'a, whatever you're doing, you're mitigating your presence as a settler, and you're also, you know, when you're feeding the lands and waters of this place, you're also feeding the lands and waters of your homeland too. That's how I see it. But that's been really great. And it's also an awesome way to like network with people. You meet all kinds of awesome hammers in the Lo'ikalo. So for anyone looking to network, build community, I highly suggest getting involved.
Thank you. Is that the right website that I just posted in the chat? All right. Yes, it's a very colorful website, so please check it out. Thank you so much for sharing. That's a very, very important point. Yes, and it's a very pertinent point for all of us, and very pertinent to the discussion that we're having tonight. Please, anybody else, would you like to share? Thank you again, Esme, for stepping forward and being the first one. Otherwise, does anybody have any questions for our presenters tonight?
Hey, could I introduce myself?
Yes, please, Keola. How's it?
Yeah, long time no see, Norman. My name is Keola. I'm a third generation Shimanchu and also Native Hawaiian. Right now, no, I should start with, I met Norman at UH Hilo because about every month there would be like a Okinawa, like, how you say, culture, what do you call it? Meeting kind of thing. But that's where I really got more in touch with my roots. So I want to thank him very much for that. But while I was at UH Hilo, I was majoring in linguistics, and it got me very interested in like language documentation and documenting like endangered languages of the world, because as we all know, Hawaiian may still be considered endangered, but it's been revitalized, and it's prospering very well. But when we look at the situation of like Okinawan language, the sort of pride that Hawaiians feel for our ancestral roots, it's not up to not really there in Okinawa, I feel. So now I'm actually doing my master's work in Nagoya, Japan, which is where I'm joining you all now. But my research is going to be on the Hawaii variety of uchinaguchi. So there's actually been lots of research done about the variety of Okinawan that's spoken in Brazil, but not too much about how the language has been influenced and all through Okinawan immigrants in Hawaii. So I'm hoping to start that process. So I haven't been involved in many groups or anything like that, but I hope from today I can reach out and join and be more proactive, even though I'm all the way here. And well, one thing that I have done was, as Kyle mentioned, was there was the whole renewal of leasing of the military lands in Hawaii. And if you at least attended public school in the past 10 years, I'm sure your Hawaiian history teachers have told you all about it. So there was some kind of a meeting that a community meeting. It was held on Zoom that the military army people were trying to plead to the community, like, hey, this is what we're going to do to help the environment, or if we are able or allowed to renew our leases. And I don't know if we talked. I actually joined very late today's meeting. I had a class, but there was a testimonial section at the very end after their amazing presentation of how militarism can somehow be environmental. But there was not one person that didn't call out how backwards it sounds that like we can somehow allow militarism to continue on land while also keeping it environmental. It just doesn't make sense. So everybody called it out. And what I really loved about it was that many people brought up the issues that are happening in Okinawa because it's parallel. As I think someone mentioned, I think Daniel mentioned in the chat too, it's like insane. But I really love that there was Uchinanchu in there in that call that testified and brought the parallel of what's happening in Okinawa and also Guam with what's happening, and wherever else the US is present. I really love that. There was Uchinanchu that mentioned it, and there was non-Uchinanchu that were able to make the connection. And it just speaks volumes that the issues happening in Okinawa, there's like a light being shed throughout many communities within Hawaii. And hopefully, I want to help continue to spread more awareness in any way, any capacity that I can. I'll end it there. I'm not good at public speaking, sorry.
You did great, Gila. Thank you so much. And yeah, if you want to tap into our Uchinaguchi community, by all means, please send us an email and we'll help you. Yeah, if you have any kind of fieldwork things that you need help with, please let us know. Anyone else? Definitely, yeah. If please, if you folks have anything else you'd like to share with what you folks are doing. Or if you have any
Norman,
questions. Yes.
if I may, and I'm hoping someone throws some questions, but I don't think Anna or I mentioned that Veterans for Peace, one needs not be a veteran to be part of it. It's a collaboration between folks that have been in the military and supporters, which they're called associate members. So if you are among those that it's hard to talk about military issues because it's like the sacred cow in Hawaii, biggest economy, a part of the economy, is like as a colonel is an example that working for security is not radical, it's an act of love. And that if that's a space for some folks that a safe space that want to do something, but they don't want to seem like it's all super quote anti-military. That might be a place. You're welcome. So share that. Oh, and then just if I may, thing I'm drawing from this collective here is reminding me all the times that I was in powerful collective movements of people, like for example in Okinawa, and looking at institutions like U.S. military, you know, the largest military in history. To think that like a bunch of Obachan and Yomitan can be a formidable opponent to the U.S. military is it gives hope that it's not impossible, and that like someone mentioned that these public hearings on the military here in Hawaii, it's pretty amazing. It's almost like always like 99 to 100% against the military. So while they may hold the floor, it's clear the public has their own kind of mood, and it's important if the public doesn't speak up, then don't get hurt. But when we do, it is a formal appointment. So this whole thing just gives me hope in all these stories. Thanks.
Thank you, Pete. Anybody else would like to share with our gathering here?
I just wanted to say, so I'm
Hi, Tatsuki.
Tatsuki. Hi, Norman. Hi, Kyle. Hi, Pete. I'm Tatsuki. I am from Nishihara, Okinawa. Thank you, Daniel. So I'm doing my PhD at UH Manoa now, and studying US military issues in Okinawa. But I just wanted to thank Norman and everyone, all of our panels, for sharing all these things and creating the space, because it really reminds me of how important our connections are. I've had some chance to visit Henoko and talk to our Oji Oba, and they always tell me like they know someone from Hawaii. Like they told me like they know Eric and Norman because they also visited Henoko. So when I hear that, I see how our actions always connect us. And like Wesley said, isolation can be, especially like during the pandemic, being isolated can be very scary, and it can kind of be an obstacle for us to take actions. But because now we are together in this space and sharing our stories, I just feel like the connections are very important. And that's why I just wanted to say thank you for Norman and everyone for sharing the stories and space. And I also want to be involved with maybe Daniel and others, like, you know, so yeah, just let's keep in touch. And yeah, I just wanted to say that.
Thank you so much, Tatsuki. That's yes, a very important point. And really, that's what we that was the intention for this evening, was really to create a space. Like I said, we are space makers, and that's one of our main goals for this Umanchu Suruti series. Umanchu Suruti literally means 10,000 people together, but it means it's a poetic term for everybody when we say Umanchu. So when you say Umanchu Majiri, Umanchu Suruti, it means that, yeah, everybody gathers. And this is what really what we hope, yeah, that it's a place for everyone to gather, to everyone to feel included, everyone to feel connected. And if the one thing there may be some of you out there that feel like I'm not doing enough, or what am I doing, or I feel guilted into doing something and that I have to take action, I have to do something. That's not the intention. Is not to make you feel guilty. We're not Okinawan mothers. But it's again the part of the connection is a big part of it is awareness, and you know, I think a lot of us are in different places, you know, like Pete mentioned too, that some people need a safe space maybe to be able to talk about demilitarization, those kind of things, because it's not it's I mean in our state it can be a very taboo subject for a lot of families and a lot of communities. But hopefully one of the things that we hoped for tonight was that to at least point you folks in the right direction of places that you can turn to for certain safe spaces, people that you can look up to, hopefully for further conversation, for possible actions in the future, places to collaborate, places to maybe germinate new ideas or maybe perhaps new actions. And the first thing that really starts, you know, everything in our culture is relationships, and to be able to, unfortunately, yeah, we can't do this live, but on the flip side is we're able to bring together several time zones and geographic places into one space here for all of us to see, and so you get to at least put a face to names and yeah, the voice to the people that are actually doing the actions in our community and have been pushing for many, many years, tireless work in our community to not only spread awareness, but to actually provide support in all different kind of ways to various actions that affect us directly or indirectly even. And yeah, at the end of the day, we want you folks to come away with a sense of connection in all kind of ways. If you're here just to listen and learn about the experiences that are or the things that are happening in our community, experiences that people that are doing the activism work are facing, then that's great. It's something that you didn't know. If it spurs you to take some kind of action, by all means, let that germinate. Make contacts, talk it over. And I think that's one of the big things is that really is we want this to be the start of conversation, because that's the most important thing, is that we need to really start conversing about these issues, about why certain things are taboo, why we can't, as a Uchinanchu community in Hawaii, why we can't talk about certain things. Why is it a problem for a performing arts organization to be political? Why is it a problem for Uchinanchu to be involved with demilitarization, and all these different kind of questions? We need to really start that conversation. And if anything, if tonight helps you to get the language to help start that conversation, or even the courage to start that conversation, then yeah, that I think we've accomplished part of our goal. And Lynn, I'm sorry, you had something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say something. I've been looking at Hinoko, and with all the question, like, what actions are you going to take? And I never came up with anything, and it's been bothering me. And so anyway, I had this dream and to make a poster. And I was like, a poster and about Hineko, just to have people, I guess, know about it. And then I thought, well, what good is a poster? But then I came up with, in Landmark Education, I'm involved with their programs. They have seminars and trainings. They have, once a year, they have a conference for global transformation. And people have an opportunity to present their, whatever they want to present to the world, to inform the world. And I thought, well, that might be, I've never attended, but I've heard about it. So this weekend I had a training and I asked them about it. And I asked if maybe that was too political, but I presented it as like an environmental thing, the ocean, how they're ruining the ocean, and all the endangered species. And they said, oh, that would be perfect. So, and then they will train you on how to do posters. And it's only for people who have taken the training, the forum and the, anyway, these trainings that the public can't go. And I thought, well, what good is it? But I thought it would be a good training for me. So it's going to be in May of 2022. I thought maybe I would take a look at it and maybe, I don't know, if you want to make a poster, the deadline is March 1st. And then they will train you on how to do it. So I thought maybe I might, I don't know when, anyway, I'm just looking at that. And I don't know, I know I don't know enough to have, if people ask me questions, I don't know enough, you know, to be there with my poster talking about, you know, about Hinoko. But anyway, so I just thought I would just put it out there that maybe that's one of my actions I'd take, but I have to do a lot of research. I got to learn a lot more. So anyway, so that's, and you know, like if anybody wants to, you know, have input, I'll be glad to receive it. And especially if they're in they took the forum and the wisdom course. So that's what it is. Oh yeah, or the S train.
Actually, Lynn, do you mind? Do you have a website or something that we could refer people to in case they're interested in actually participating in the training? Or
not right now. So I might have it later. Not right
okay.
Now. So maybe I'll give it to you later.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you very much. Yeah. And you know, not only conversation starters, but also tools. Looking at different tools that are in our communities. Yeah. Just like what you're talking about, Lynn. You know, it doesn't have to be an Okinawan thing. You don't have to play Sanshin or do Odori to be able to talk about Okinawan things. You don't have to even be involved with the Okinawan group to do something for Okinawa or about Okinawa. Yeah, there's all these different tools, these different resources, these different ways that you can access some kind of meaningful, something that's meaningful to yourself. And yeah, that's what we really wanted to kind of just put out tonight is those ideas, ways that you can do something meaningful. And it doesn't have to be big.
Yeah, and usually you have to be in person, you know, go to LA or wherever, Chicago, you know, but now it's virtual because of the COVID. And so I think the next one in May of 2022 will be virtual. So, and it costs with the graduates of the program, like, you know, money to even attend, but, you know, there's going to be some exposure of, you know, so anyway, that's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
Oh yeah,
very
and
much for
it's
sharing.
worldwide. People from all over, you know, like Australia, Europe, attend that the conference. So
Okay.
and pretty high-powered people. But anyway, so thank you. That's it.
Is that so that thing the program you talking about is a landmark worldwide?
Yes.
There's a I'm just gonna post that.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna post that that website in the chat in case you folks are interested in looking at that. Yeah. By all means necessary. Whatever we can do. Yeah. Does anyone else have anything you'd like to share? We're a little bit over time, but yes, Kyle, definitely. Yes. Trainings on how to be an advocate for Hinoko and other issues. Yeah, definitely would be useful. Yeah. And this is the important thing, I think, is and this is one of the functions of it too, is, like I said, this was a sort of a follow-up for our last month's presentation, and it's like we felt bad about kind of putting out the information about what's happening and not giving an avenue for taking action. And it's unfortunately, but as an organization, ukwanshin, of course, we'd love to be more engaging, more active in being able to do these sorts of things, but just the limitations and what our capacity of as what we can do as an organization is, we can offer the space for these conversations to happen, and the space for the space for these interchanges and for these encounters. Unfortunately, we don't have the capacity to manage these community networks and to be like a meeting center. Not quite yet, but we'll try our very best as much as possible to at least share resources and to and hopefully, that we can start creating more spaces like this for people to get together and to look at different things. Yeah, especially like Kyle, it's a great idea to do trainings on how to or even even if not to do that, how to approach conversations with our families and friends about these issues, all those different things. And if we do that, you guys are going to be getting a call from me again, because I can't think of better people that can actually speak to that. I mean, what you folks have shared tonight was just amazing, and being able to speak from your from your experiences of being on the ground. But not only that, but the way that you folks have been able to engage with other people, with other communities, and with each other, even over the course of many years. And the thing that I admire about all of you folks is just the longevity. It's sometimes it's hard to see when we see in the community that we see just these sort of spots of actions, and we look back and say, okay, maybe there was a small thing that happened. There was a gathering that so many people showed up, and then nothing happened. The base is still being built, water is still being contaminated, the military is still not listening to the people, and these things. And we don't see, sometimes we don't see the direct outcomes of these actions that take a lot of hard work, that take a lot of effort, a lot of time, especially to get together and to do. But one of the things about, I think, about resistance and about affecting change is the most important thing is that we have to endure, and we have to have the endurance. We have to be the ability to just basically stick around long enough to be the pain in the side of somebody, stick around long enough to keep that idea alive, to keep that voice alive. And sometimes, it doesn't sound like we're being heard all the time, but that voice, like Wesley mentioned again, we got to keep on broadcasting that analog AM signal, even if people are listening to they're listening to their internet radio and their hi-fi signals. We got to keep on broadcasting, because there's going to be a time when somebody's going to need us and somebody's ready to listen. And there may be a time when that we can really it all come together, and that we can actually we can hopefully see that change in front of our faces. But nonetheless, we need to just keep on being around. And you folks have done that, demonstrated that over the course of so many years. And I'd just like to call out to all of you folks that our friends need our support. We need support. We all need to support each other, that we can stick around, just be around long enough. Pete, you know what that means, right? To be around so long. And and Pete and Wesley, you guys have been in there for a long time, right? And
you know what, I always get humbled though by the smallest things. And I was listening to Mrs. Nakamura and hearing everything you're saying, and I just recall my daughter in preschool. The teacher told me, oh, your daughter Rayo, today in class today, one kid was sharing show and tell about saw Honu, the turtle on the beach on the weekend, doing show and tell. And then Rayo just jumped up and said, yeah, it's endangered, like the dugong. We have to save them. Now she's like 3-4 years old at the time, but she knew enough what's right, what's right action, right speech. And I was like, wow, I didn't tell her to do that. But that courage and that feeling, hey man, I know I'm feeling something's not right. I gotta say something. So I hope people feel like the same way that we're all working from the bottom up, trying to hold each other's space for all of us, for our voices collectively, so we can be heard. Yeah. This is very healing. Thanks, Norman.
Thank you. So first of all, I'd like to thank the 4 of you for spending time, those long conversations with me, first of all, and then for spending this time with us tonight. And more importantly, just for being there for all of our communities, for supporting the voices that need to be heard, doing the actions that need to be done, even if nobody's seen you and it's done in the shadows sometimes, but for just being there and for doing that. So thank you so much. And to all of you folks out there for sticking around with us tonight. Yeah, and listening to us jabber. If you folks missed anything in the chat, I'll see if I can I've done this before. I'll see if I can do a digest of the chat and all of the contact information, some of the links and stuff that are in there. I'll see if I can digest that, and we'll blast that out in an email blast as well. Yeah, in the meantime, stay safe, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and yeah, we hope to see you folks soon. All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
David, thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Good job, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. That's good.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I need a training.